Alright, here we go. Got a little Metallica going. Hardwired to self-destruct. Here we are on week 11 of this semester. This will be the lecture for that. So let's just get ahead and get going with it. Now, one of the things that this chapter does is it talks about jails, prisons, the populations, a little bit of the history. I know that there's a PowerPoint posted on the content section of D2L. Make sure you go through that. That's always the best place to get the highlights of the chapter. Instead of reading every single word in the textbook, I would take those PowerPoints, go through the book, use the PowerPoints as a guide to look at the main parts of each one of these chapters that we're going over, so you get the basic idea of what we're trying to say in this chapter. So this one has to really do with the prisons and the jails. We really follow two models that were the beginning models, the beginning systems for incarceration in America. One's called the Auburn model. Sometimes they talk about it being the New York model. Same thing. And it was a model based on what they call congregation, which meant that the prisoners still needed to be with other people, other prisoners, other inmates. They would eat their meals together. They'd do work together. They would have recreation time together. They had this congregation point where they would still have to be social and be socialized. That was called the Auburn model. The Pennsylvania model was based on a little bit more of a solitary confinement model. They thought that your time in prison needed to be spent in deep isolation and reflection. That the only way you were going to learn about what you did that was wrong was to sit quietly in your cell, work quietly by yourself in total isolation and reflection. Now, in today's prison system, we use both Auburn and Pennsylvania at different points. Obviously, the Pennsylvania model is the current model we use for Supermax and other areas where we put you in solitary confinement, total isolation. And then the rest of the prison system is based on the idea of the congregation, the Auburn model, where you're together for meals, for recreation, for work. Those are really the main historical things that got us to where we are. Understand also that there's a difference between a prison and a jail. A jail is going to be run by the counties. In fact, in Colorado, that's one of the rules by statute. So it's a law that each county sheriff needs to run a jail. These jails house essentially 5 different kinds of prisoners. The first ones they house are prisoners that have been arrested awaiting for their day in court and were not able to post bail. So they're housed there. The second ones are after you're convicted of your crime and now you're awaiting sentencing. Very rarely do you go to trial, get convicted, and get sentenced the same day. So now we're going to house you in county jail until you can get your sentencing done. The third ones are you are housed in county jail if you're serving a minor sentence. So you get sentenced on a misdemeanor to 90 days in jail, 120 days in jail. Really up to almost 2 years, they'll house you in county jail. I think Colorado doesn't like to go past a year and a half, 18 months, but I know in some instances they've housed people up to 2 years in county jail. The fourth ones are the people that are picked up on parole violations and probation violations, and they're just waiting their hearings to see if they're going to go back to prison. They're housed at county jail. And then the last ones are felons that are being housed in county jail until there's room for them to be transferred to prison. So they've already been to court, they've already been convicted, they've already been sentenced to go to prison, but now they're just waiting in county jail for their spot to come open in prison. Those are the 5 groups held in county jails. When you're held in county jail, it's at the county's expense. Once you're sent away to prison, you're held at the state's expense. Excuse me. Depending on the size of your county, that can be a substantial cost to the county to house that many prisoners. When we talk about prisons, in Colorado we have minimum security, medium security, maximum security, and supermax. The book gives you some rundown on what each of those is. What makes the difference is what kind of prisoner can be housed there and the amount of security they do. A minimum security has very, very limited barriers and security, and they house the least dangerous and the least risky prisoners. And what I mean by risky is nobody thinks they're going to run away, because literally, since it's minimum security, they could just physically run away and probably get away with it for a while. So these are prisoners that have been screened. They're there for a short period of time. They're not a high risk to run away, and therefore we don't need a lot of security on them. The majority of what keeps them from leaving is the idea if they leave this minimum facility, which is a pretty decent place to be, then when you get caught, you get sent to a higher security prison. Most of the inmates don't want to risk that, and so they're willing to stay there even though they could literally walk away from the facility and be gone. And medium security raises the level a little bit of security, therefore they have a little bit higher security, higher risky inmates. Excuse me. Maximum security is the prisoners that are being housed that are a little more what most people think prison to be. They're the higher risk inmates with the maximum security, lockdown, steel doors, bars on doors and windows, limited access, double high fences with concertina wire at the top. That's max. And then we have the highest of them all, which is the Supermax. We'll talk a little bit more Supermax in detail next week. But it's obviously the facilities that are set up for the worst of the worst. And the concept is the total lockdown, total isolation setup, that the prisoners never leave their cells with other prisoners Most of them are set up on a 23-to-1. You're locked down in your cell 23 hours a day. You get out 1 hour a day, possibly, for other things. That's the systems, the four levels of prisons that Colorado operates. Now, we do operate some other setups that are based on alternative sentencing things. Stuff like prison farms. Some states do these where they actually house prisoners on work, active farms, dairy farms, cattle ranches, other type farms. We used to run some boot camps in Colorado. We don't anymore, but other states still do a boot camp system. It's a military-style system of increased discipline to try to teach you how to be more disciplined in your life. We do some halfway houses. You may spend a little bit of time in prison, but then we're going to put you into a house in the community where you have some more freedom. You're still locked down every night. Your movements are still controlled, but hopefully we're integrating you back into society is the idea with those. Now, obviously, if we're in person, we would go into a little more depth of these. Watch the PowerPoint, follow along in your book, and you should be fine. For this week's assignment, you need to watch a video. It's a video by National Geographic. There'll be a post for it in the content section of D2L. It's a National Geographic video. It's called Alcatraz Breakout New Evidence. You'll need to watch that before you can do this week 12 or week 11 assignment. You can find that on YouTube. There'll be a discussion post for this week, so make sure you find that and do it, along with the assignment I just mentioned. There'll be an email coming out, probably about the same time you're watching this video, about what the projects are going to be. Still based on a case, but in reference to presentation and things like that. That'll definitely be different. So watch for that email. That'll tell you what you need to do. Final thing is a reminder. It's time right now to register for fall classes. We will be back on campus. They'll be live and in person. So if you like that better, in criminal justice, we're going to be offering 3 classes that are available to you since you passed your intro class. They are a corrections class. If you're going to get a degree in criminal justice, it's a requisite class. You must have it. We're doing that one in the fall. We're doing a criminology, which is kind of a fun class. We go into some of the ideas of why people commit crime. It's a little more in-depth, a little more case-based stuff. And then we do another one that is a hands-on class. It's an intro to forensic science. So we're actually going into how we do some of these forensic science type things based on the criminal justice and using them in how it works in cases and to solve cases. So, sign up for the fall criminal justice classes. See ya.